to translate to the patient, we need to be partnering with the people that know how to do it. We need to be driving in the type 1 diabetes clinical space. And so if I had my way, 20% would be going into this area so that we can try to start getting this research translated. So this is our historical spend with companies. It's very small compared to what we're doing. So this year, 99% of everything we did went to the academic community, and only 1% went to industry. That's the stats we need to change if we're going to do translational research. So with that, to finish my talk, there's a relationship for us to be successful. It's about the science. We have to have the knowledge to do what we do. We have to understand it to make good decisions and drive into the clinic. We have got to partner with academia, with government, with industry, and the bottom line is in order to measure success, we have to have patient outcomes. So that's what we're doing in research. I hope it was useful. I tried to cover 3 main areas. What are we doing in FY12? How do we partner? And what is translational research? And so I hope it was useful for you. Thank you for your attention. So I can take questions if you have questions. Yes?
The ADA seems like they parallel a lot what you do. Do you partner with them and do you know what each other's doing?
So, interesting. They were on our call yesterday. So the ADA, huge amount of funding in type 2. And it is true there's overlap between type 1 and type 2. They just had brought in a new head, David Kendall, and he joined, I think our first meeting with him was in September. Dynamic individual, really was going to shake up the ADA. We started fostering that relationship, and of course 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago while we were at annual conference, he announced he would be leaving the ADA. So we've tried. I think, again, I don't know the history, wasn't with the organization before. I thought this year we were going to make a very strong run to partner strongly with ADA because there's a lot of great things that we could partner on. We just did a co-funding in the genetics of neuropathy with them. But now that the leadership is changing again, we don't know who the new leadership is going to be. So they joined our call yesterday. We're talking to them. They do fund in type 1, of course, so we want to know everything they're doing in that space. I think some of the work they're doing in type 2 translates to type 1, and I think we can talk about that. But I think that could be better, but we need to see what their leadership's going to be and where whoever comes in to lead is where they take that organization.
So they are doing type 1. So.
They are doing type 1, but it's a much smaller percentage than type 2. As you know, they're really a type 2 organization. Other questions? Yes?
You mentioned focusing on the sensors right now with the artificial pancreas. Who are the partners for research with the improved sensors?
For the companies?
Yeah, what companies are working with?
Well, so this is the initiative we're going to launch, and it will be launched next week. We have an idea of who the companies it might be, but we're not sure yet. So at the ADA meetings, we're going to launch the initiative. We have a big web blast going out to the companies. There's probably about 6 companies in the space. So we'll know more after the ADA meeting when we have a lineup with all these companies to meet with them, to tell them what it is that we think we need, whether it be redundancy in the sensor or, there's lots of things on the table. So I think we'll have a better feel after we launch the initiative. We meet with these companies, we see what their interest is, what their technologies they're thinking about, because there's lots of different ways to approach sensor technology. So I think once we do those meetings on June 25th and 26th, we're going to have a better sense of who we're going to fund in that area. But we're willing, I think the Helmsley Trust coming in to partner with us on that really shows that they understand that's an important gap that we really need to pay attention to. Other? Yes?
You mentioned smart insulin and where is that going? Because that was, you know, a big thing a couple years ago.
So, as you know, we funded the early research work in that area, along with NIH. So that company was acquisition taken over by Merck. Merck now has bought all rights and has taken it inside. Originally, they forecasted that they would be moving that into the clinic. We now know that they've had to step back, which is very common. This comes out of, you know, biotech. So they're going to reevaluate the technology and some of the data. So they were really originally going to hit the clinic next year, and now we've heard a month ago that they've now delayed that. So it's looking more like maybe 2 years away before they feel they've got enough data to move that into man. So that's where it is.
Is that about to be a type 1 cure or more of a type 2?
I think it will be type 1. I mean, theoretically, if I can't call it smart insulin because that's a trademark, but if glucose responsive insulin works, it would definitely be type 1 because you would take it, it would sense itself when to release. So it's a formulation that holds insulin bound, and so it would be able to tell what the levels of glucose are in your blood and release insulin as needed. So perhaps it could be a once a day pill, maybe a twice, you know, it depends what the technology is. Right now you don't know. Smart insulin went in and right now would have to be injected once a day, or every other day maybe. But I think this initiative that we're going to launch, I think we should be shooting for an oral medication. And of course, the longer it stays on board, the less you have to take it. So wouldn't it be great, one pill every other day, once a week, and then it automatically senses and can deliver insulin as needed. So I absolutely applicable to type 1 for sure. But I want to be really clear, very challenging science, very challenging. And regulatory hurdles, enormous. Because as you can imagine, there's a safety issue with it. So it will be. There's safety hurdles that will need to be considered. So as that technology advances, if it really can be advanced, if it can be realized, we have to be working the regulatory area very strong. Because they're going to be, this technology has been used in other areas, such as hormone delivery. So there's other areas, for example, delivering of estrogen or testosterone. So in the women's health arena and in the male health arena, it's been tried before. So the FDA, we already know kind of how they're going to feel about developing a pill that can be taken and automatically releasing insulin. So it will be challenging. But
how can it be done through a pill if you can't even take insulin through a pill? Why is that?
because it's all got to be formulated, figured out. The insulins we have right now, we're trying to get reformulated insulins, better insulins. We have an insulin initiative as well. So it's all about what's the product you start with to begin with. So it's in glucose responsive insulin, you're actually going to end up, and you have to work with engineers too. You're going to make some kind of substance that literally can bind up the insulin inside it, almost like a capsule sort of thing, and then sense when it needs to be released based on the level of glucose in the blood. That's the whole principle behind it. So you can imagine, scientifically challenging. So smart insulin was first shot on goal. We'll see what ends up. That is exactly what smart insulin does. So, they put it in animal models. They've done in silico testing. Merck will continue to try to develop it and see what they got. They'll be very careful before they put it in man to make sure it's going to work and make sure it's safe. It's really about safety. Does that help? A little bit. It's complicated. So, yes?
When we fund development to industry, do we take any ownership in any of that technology?
We don't. You mean the intellectual property?
Yeah.
No, we don't. And there's good reasons why we don't. It's very expensive to take intellectual property. the deal is that the companies own the intellectual property as they should. I mean, why do we don't want to own it. We want to drive it and get it available, right? So, no, we do not take as of now, and I think that's a good position because once we start taking intellectual property, the regulators will view us differently. We will be holding intellectual